Hello and welcome to this review of my Keychron Q1 HE review. This one is yet another donation from Keychron. I've reviewed a whole bunch of their models by now, and so far I've been quite impressed with their stuff. So when they announced a Hall effect model, I of course immediately got in touch with them to cover it because this seemed like a great step for them. Keychron have a pretty vast catalogue of keyboards, so big that navigating all the different models on their website can be quite difficult, especially as their model numbers make no discernible sense. This isn't even their first contactless model either. They also have an optoelectric version, the K8, which comes with Gateron KS22 optical switches. I've reviewed that one before as well. However, this is their first Hall effect model, and that has several potential benefits over optoelectric keyboards, chief among which is a much greater suitability for use with analog sensing, which in turn can be exploited through the use of adjustable actuation, which I think is an absolutely endgame feature. I've explained on many occasions why I feel like adjustable actuation brings such a crucial set of abilities to the table, especially for linear switches. The ability to adjust the sensitivity of your keys, especially individually, to your specific needs, is a massive advantage. Now, my personal take on this may not apply to everyone, but it is a good example of a user case, I guess, so I'll explain in a little bit more detail. So personally, I like my linears really light. With tactile clicky switches I prefer them a bit stiffer, but linears I prefer to be featherweights. But normally this of course results in switches that are way too sensitive, in such a way that even just the weight of your fingers resting on the keys will easily set them off, so that's a problem. Therefore, being able to adjust the sensitivity down can compensate for this. Here's my current layout. The WASD keys are a bit lower down, because that's what my fingers rest on normally, of course, and the spacebar is a bit stiffer too, because my thumb is on that, plus the caps lock is all the way down, so it's very hard to press accidentally. You do this programming on their web app, by the way. The board is also QMK and VIA compatible, but you can't set the actuation distances in VIA, so I'm using this web app. It's nice that you don't have to install anything or mess around with JSON files, and it's very user-friendly, and it looks professional, so not too much to complain about here. It'd be nice to have an on-board customization option, but as far as software packages go, it's pretty decent to be honest. It even has an option for manually calibrating the switches should it be needed. Now, almost all contactless switches are very lightweight, some are featherweight really, but if you don't like your switches that light, many of these may be below your preferred weighting. These, however, have a much more medium weighting. It's got a 40-gram preload and a 60-gram terminal force, so it's a little bit stiffer than MX Red. Still not exactly stiff, not even halfway the difference to MX Black in fact, but the difference is noticeable. Specifically, these are the Gateron Nebula switches. There are also Dawn switches, which are lighter, and Aurora switches, which are even stiffer. They come pre-lubed, though that's normally not that necessary for contactless switches in my opinion, and they use a so-called dual rail system, which really just means that it's got two guide rails instead of the customary one, for added stability, I guess. Now, compared to something like a Wooting 2, which is one of the god-tier smoothness boards, it feels more buttery, which is to say you can feel the lubricant very explicitly, and maybe the two rails add more friction as well, whereas the Wooting feels floatier and more effortless. It's kind of difficult to accurately gauge smoothness because of the difference in weighting. I'd say the Wooting feels more like I'd expect contactless switches to feel, but again I prefer lighter linears, so it's probably a personal thing. Anyway, if you want a different weighting, you have three options like I mentioned, and the switches are hot swappable, so you can even stick in a few lighter or stiffer switches on specific portions of the board, which I think is where we're really starting to hit endgame linear, I think. Apart from the switches, it's otherwise pretty much the same as a normal Q series Keychron board, which is their high-end premium series, compared to the more standard type K series and the V series, which I think is more entry level. But they also have Max and Pro versions of everything, so I can't really keep track of their whole catalogue. Q is their flagship series though, that much I do know. I've done two Qs before, the Q1 Pro and the Q6, which is this beast. I swear they need more full-size models. Anyway, the Q series are legitimate tanks, with even this little one, the Q1 HE, weighing in at 1.7 kilos. I looked up what that is in imperial units, and it's apparently 1.68 micro Eiffel Towers, 12.14 micro blue whales, 116 nano Brooklyn bridges, or 8.33 micro Statues of Liberty. I mean, geez guys, can't you at least just pick one unit to measure something in, please, even if it's something as silly as a pound? Anyway, the reason for this massive weight is the fact that the entire housing is a giant block of machined aluminium. It's also the main difference between the Q series and the rest, such as the K series, which use a much simpler, more plastic-heavy housing. Needless to say, the build quality is outstanding and the finish is really nice. It's definitely a potential murder weapon, I can tell you that much. The keycaps are also really nice. They're fairly thick, double-shot PBT, so the best quality that you can get. And although I think the font is maybe a little bit small, I like the rounded shape of the caps and the set's profile. They come in a variety of color schemes. This one's a nice and classy black and white, but there's also a rather weird green and white color scheme available, which looks like it's an ad for toothpaste or something. Their other models have way more color schemes, but this is apparently what they have for this model right now. I particularly like their dark blue color scheme. I hope they put that in for this model as well soon. Overall, I think this is an outstanding keyboard. There's really basically nothing for me to complain here, which is pretty rare. The only things I'd like is, ironically since I've been saying how big their catalogue is, more options for this model, as it's currently only available in ANSI and in this form factor and in those two colours, but I guess more options will follow over time. Considering how many interchangeable components they make, that really shouldn't be too hard. Another obstacle is the price. At $219, this isn't a cheap board, obviously. It's a fairly normal price for keyboards in this class. Basically, all analog keyboards are north of $200, and with this one at least you get an aluminium chassis for it, which is definitely a rarity. I can't think of any other all-aluminium models on the market right now, in fact. So yeah, it's not cheap, but still reasonably priced, I think, considering all that you're getting. It also gives it, together with the dual rail looped switches, a relatively mute sound compared to many other contactless keyboards. You'll notice that in the typing demo. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.